All right, I'm sorry about that. Had a little hiccup with the internet, so we're gonna try to reconnect, and hopefully this thing will go through. All right, we are back. So, the question of the day for the fellas, for the fellas, if a female friend zoned you and comes back to you sometime later, months, years, and she gives you this proposition of marriage. Look, I know I said I don't like you like that, but I need your help. I'm about to lose all my shit unless I find a husband. Would you please marry me? Would you do it? That's the question. If somebody friend zoned you only to later on decide they actually need you to help them out of a jam, would you do it? Would you help them in whatever it is that they asking you to do? Now, keep in mind, what they're asking you to do is more in line with what a boyfriend or a husband would do. But you just a friend. They didn't think of you. They never thought of you that way. They might even knew that you felt that way about them, but they just wanted to be friends. Now all of a sudden they need you. They want you to proclaim to the world that y'all more than just friends. So the question is, would you do it? If they wanted to pull you off the friend zone shelf and take the dust off, would you do it? Ponder that for a minute.
And you know what she had access to? The library at Alexandria. The library. So as a child, undoubtedly, she goes to the library and she's interacting with scholars. We know, there's a tradition, shouldn't say we know, but there's a tradition that sometimes she was at the side of her father, Oletus the flute player, when he greeted ambassadors. And that she would see what was going around at the palace. And she would sometimes be allowed perhaps to greet them in their own language. She was learning languages as a child. So she goes to the library. Now, what can she read in the library? What's there? Well, one of the things that I always think about, we do not know exactly what she read. We have no record whatsoever of any specific work that she read as a child. But I would bet anything she read Herodotus. Our Herodotus, who was there around 450 BC, a Greek who wrote in Greek. And she read Herodotus, and she read the history of Egypt. And she knew that this was a great history. This was going to influence her. Because she was going to become, in a sense, an Egyptian again. But we've got her sister on the throne. Sister's on the throne. Pompey's one, Crassus is second, and Caesar's the third. And he's going to bribe anybody he can talk to keep on the throne.
I thought that name sounded familiar. Pompeii, the city of Pompeii, the famous, however you want to word it. Pompeii got bombarded by volcanic ash. It was literally buried under volcanic ash. And it was said that there were warning signs, there was red flags, but nobody was paying attention, nobody cared. And the day of the explosion, when the volcano erupted, it was massive devastation. It was said that you could still, once they start doing the digging up of all the dirt and the ash, pottery, whole human beings intact. just I have to go into that at another time, but the name sounded familiar because it was tied to a city, the city of Pompeii. So I'm pretty sure he has something to do with the founding of this city. Just observation of mine.
What does Ptolemy the 12th say? He says, I'll give you money. You're going to keep me on the throne, but you're not going to get paid unless I stay on the throne. So it's a kind of logic that works. Rome isn't going to get this great bakshish, as we say in the Middle East, unless they keep him on the throne. And they're going to keep him on the throne. So they send troops back to Alexandria. And you know who goes with those troops? Mark Antony, head of the cavalry. And there's a battle. Bernice on the throne has picked a strong husband. He marches out to fight the forces of Rome and is killed. He's killed. And one of the signs that Antony is a good man is that Auletes, the flute player, who is now back in Egypt and on the throne, wants to let the body rot on the battlefield. Let it rot. That's what he tells him. Now, this is the worst thing that a Greek can do to a Greek. The worst. It was always a point of honor, if you could, to bring back the body. I mean, there was even a great Spartan saying, you said to Greek soldiers when they went out, come back with your shield or on it. Right? Not only being brave, but you're going to come back and your fellow army men were going to carry you on your shield. Right? So he's willing to let the body rot. Right? But Antony won't permit this. This is a noble man. He's an army man, and he understands such things. So the body is buried, and the Egyptians recognize this as a good man. So Auletes, our flute player, is back on the throne. Now, who was happy and who was unhappy about this? It's interesting to speculate. Well, certainly unhappy is Bernice, right? He has her executed.
Oh.
His daughter, who seized the throne, is viewed as a traitor. The husband's out of the way now. And I think one of the people who must have been happy was Cleopatra. Cleopatra 7, our Cleopatra. What about Cleopatra's sister? Remember she had an older sister named Cleopatra? Well, I ask you the question, I don't really have an answer. She disappears right at the time of Bernice becoming queen. The general assumption is Bernice had her killed. So now we've just got Cleopatra in the palace with her younger sister Arsinoe and the two boys, two Ptolemies, those half-brothers. Auletes is back on the throne. Right? The Greek population of Alexandria can't be too happy about this, but they can't do anything about it either. There are a couple of interesting...
Wait a minute. Just wait a freaking minute. So these Greeks have a history of killing each other off. One sister trying to chase the bag. She worried about the other sister trying to take her bag. And the daddy like, you know what? Bump this. I'm getting rid of all y'all. Like, who does that? Who in their right mind? Even if you had half a mind, why would you go that far as to kill your own sister? First of all, you marry your bestie so that you can keep your shit. Then you had your sister killed, one of your sisters killed, the next in line for the throne, only then to turn around and be executed by your own father for the shit you did. Man. So my question is to this. My fellow countrymen, specifically speaking, Negroes. If a group of powerful white people, Europeans, are capable of doing this to their own blood, their own family members, close family members, what do you really expect them to have your best interest? If they willing to kill their own sisters and brothers off, mothers and aunts, do you really think they got your best interest? Think about that. All you so-called educated, college-educated people. Just think. Think about that. They killed their own family members for money and clout. And this didn't just happen one time. This happened over generations. Different family lineages of the Ptolemies. After Ptolemy the third, it started getting bad. After Ptolemy the fifth, all hell broke loose. They killing each other, literally killing each other for power. And black women think, Negro women think that other women outside of their group have their interests at heart. Really. These people sitting up here killing their own family members. But you think they got your back. You think when they say all men are dogs and they ain't shit, they telling the truth. Yeah. Okay. You keep that same energy. When it smack you in the face, don't say we didn't tell you. I'm just saying.
Consequences of this action. One is, we now have Roman troops stationed in Alexandria. Roman troops. And you know, they're pretty happy about it. This is pretty good lodgings. You know, they've got good food. They've never seen a city like this. Alexandria is the greatest city in the world. And there are ships coming. There's things going on. So they're pretty happy to stay put. They don't want to get out in the grubby warfare and fight. No, they don't want that. That's one consequence. Roman troops in Alexandria. Alettus uses them carefully. He's no longer the flute player. I think he knows his days are numbered. And he becomes a serious ruler. He's fighting to stay alive. That's what he's doing. Fighting to stay alive. So he keeps an eye on the troops, keeps them under his thumb. The other thing Alettus does, Ptolemy 12, he starts building temples, right? I think he's feeling, this may be my last hurrah. And he builds on an interesting site, Philae Island. Philae Island. Now, Philae Island, if you'll remember, is an island near Aswan, the southern border of Egypt. And if you go back just a few lectures, one of the last native rulers of Egypt, Nectanebo I, right? Remember Nectanebo I? Built a kiosk on Philae Island. This is where the Ptolemies chose to build, on Philae Island. I think there's one reason is it's an available piece of land. There wasn't a lot of temples there, right? Wasn't a lot of temples. But also, you know, Greeks always liked water, and this is an island. It's not an Egyptian kind of mentality that builds on an island. It's a Greek mentality, and these are Greeks. And in a sense, Philae is the Karnak temple of the Ptolemies. In other words, remember how at Karnak temple in Thebes, one pharaoh after another added a temple, added a temple, added a temple? This is their Karnak temple. One Ptolemy after the other builds on Philae. Now, there's several unusual things about Philae. One that always strikes me, you know, it is, many people say, it is the most beautiful temple in Egypt. Many people feel that. And it's not just the setting, it's really exquisite. And one thing it shows is that bad people can do good things. You know, it's a beautiful temple. other amazing thing about it is that it works. What I mean is, when you visit Philae Temple, it just seems like a beautiful temple. But it was built piecemeal. One guy adding something, one guy adding something. It's surprising, but it works. It's dedicated primarily to the goddess Isis. And Isis, during the Ptolemaic time, during these Ptolemies, is rising. Her stock is going up. She is by far the most important goddess in Egypt now. She is considered the wife of Serapis. Remember Serapis, the manufactured god of the Ptolemies? The one who looks like Zeus with a basket of produce on his head? She is the wife. And Serapis is less important than Isis. We hear more about Isis because she interacts with the daily people. She is the goddess to whom you prayed if you wanted something. She is the nurturer. So these Ptolemies are building temples on Philae. And Auletus, Ptolemy 12, his swan song, he builds on Philae, dedicating to Isis. Philae, by the way, is one of the temples which was moved when the Aswan Dam was built. Now remember that the Nile flows from south to north. And when the dam was built at Aswan, the water behind it backed up, forming Lake Nasser, the largest man-made body in the world. Right? This is the 1960s it was begun. And what that meant was temples were going to be flooded, submerged forever as the waters back up, submerged forever beneath the waters of Lake Nasser. UNESCO started a major project to save the monuments of Nubia, as it was called. And what various countries did was they each...
Okay. Point of interest. I have heard, I haven't confirmed this, but I've heard that there are Egyptian artifacts buried underwater in the United States. Reason why I bring this up, because the American government has this thing for building dams. And just out of curiosity, I'm thinking, what if when they were building these dams, they flooded certain areas that would hide these artifacts underwater, never to be seen again? It's possible that they did it on purpose. I don't know. I can't say for sure. If anybody has any information on this, share it with the group. I'd like to know myself. But yeah, that's very interesting. And he said these people went and built these structures. Then they turn around and build dams in other places and literally covered up a lot of historical artifacts buried underwater. Crazy.
Almost adopted a temple. And different engineers came with different plans to move temples. For example, if you'll remember from Ramses the Great, I mentioned briefly that Abu Simbel was moved. Ramses' great temple was cut in blocks and moved to a higher part of the island, right, of the mainland, higher. Philae, the entire island, had to be moved. Every temple on that island had to be moved to a different island. Now, think about how you're going to do that. The waters of the Nile, by the way, when they come to the conclusion they've got to move the whole temple, are rising. They only had a few years before this thing was going to go under forever. Forever. There were plans, by the way, not to move this Ptolemaic complex. What they were thinking of doing is building a cofferdam, sinking pilings right into the Nile, all around it, so it would be protected from the rising waters. That was rejected. Eventually, a cofferdam had to be built just to save it while they were moving it. But it was finally decided that they would move Philae Temple to a nearby island, higher up. There was a higher island, and the entire temple was dismantled. Blocks were numbered. And this, by the way, was a wonderful chance for archaeologists. For the first time in history, we could see all 6 sides of a block. And you might say, well, what do you learn by looking at the underside of a block? The answer is, you see the workman's marks. You see quarry marks. You see arrows saying this way. You learn how it's tied together. You learn that there were mistakes. Not only that, you learn that some of these blocks were reused. Some Ptolemies took them from previous temples, took the carved side, put it down, and then carved their inscription on the uncarved side. So it was a boon to archaeologists to be able to move an entire temple. And for we in America, by the way, if you want to see a temple, a Nubian temple, one that was south of the Aswan Dam, go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. There is a small temple called the Temple of Dendor. It's not Dendera. People often confuse it. Dendor is a much smaller temple of a late period, even after our Ptolemies, just after. It's the Roman period. But this was given to the United States because of our effort in saving the other Nubian monuments. So, Philae
Nubian.
is totally
He said Nubian. Yeah, I'm stressing that. I'm doing that on purpose. He said Nubian artifacts. Nubia is his own country outside of Egypt. So why are other countries giving away African artifacts to the United States for helping them out, but then the American government is treating the black people like shit? You got our shit, man. You got our stuff. You keeping it from us. You're not educating our children on their culture. You're not allowing our children to learn their native culture. And so each generation is further removed from their traditional cultures. But every other group that comes to America is allowed to practice the culture that they came from. The Asians are allowed to speak their native Asian dialect. All the other groups are allowed to speak their native dialect. But when we speak a broke down version of English, we're told that we're uneducated. Uneducated how? I don't know what country in Africa I come from. I don't know my native tongue. Because my forefathers, my ancestors, had the culture beaten out of them. They were told never to pick up a book, and then they were lied on. So if I'm uneducated, it's not because I don't have the capacity to learn. It's because the United States government kept me from learning. Just like a lot of people say today, why is it that they don't teach you about finance in school? African studies in college. But in high school, they want you to sign up to vote. They want you to sign up for the draft for the military, but they won't teach you finances. It's illegal for an 18-year-old to die from smoking cigarettes. And I said that on purpose, the way I said it. But it's patriotic to sign your life away to the United States government. Really? I can't drink a beer. I can't get a cigarette, but I can die for you. You could take me away from my family, put a gun in my hand, and put my life at risk for a bunch of people I don't even know. For some people, and if you're black in America, if you're a Negro, a lot of these people don't even like you. You're expendable to them. So I don't get it. That just, the man literally said Nubia. I understand where Nubia comes from. The Nubian people from Africa. The dark-skinned people. The Negroes, if you want to call them that. Because Negro is just a Spanish word for dark. If you go to the store and you go to the Spanish food section, sometimes you can see the beans, the can of beans on the shelf. It says Negro. They pronounce it a different way, but it's still the same thing. Darker. The dark don't mean dark as in bad. It just means dark as in darker than normal. Like black would be darker than brown. Black people are darker than white people. So, yeah, darker. That's all it means. That's all it freaking means. So if I say I'm a Negro, or if I see another black person, like, what's up, Negro? I'm not saying it to be derogatory. I'm saying it because our culture has been taken from us, taken from our ancestors, and we've had to recreate ourselves the best way we know how. I'm not a nigger. I'm not a nigga. Although a nigga is actually a uneducated person, a fool. And in my culture, in our Negro culture, sometimes we say that. Instead of saying, you foolish person, we'll say, oh, you's a stupid nigga. But it's not malicious. And then people say, well, why come I can't say it? Why come I can't say it? Because nobody forced you to speak Spanish. Nobody forced you to learn French. Nobody forced you to learn an Asian language. Negroes were forced to learn the language of their oppressors. So therefore, whatever joy we take is ours. So when we say you can't say certain words, you can't say certain words. I don't give a crap who you are. If you're not from our community, no, you don't get to say it. You don't get a pass. Well, I don't understand. It's just a word. And I don't understand why you would perpetrate such violence on another human being. And then turn around and teach your kids to do the same stupid shit. And then by the time your grandkids come, well, I understand how you feel, but that had nothing to do with me. That was my grandparents that did that to you. Your parents should have took it up with them. We did. And they kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And now here we are. A bunch of white people running around talking about, oh, well, it wasn't our fault. It wasn't our fault. And guess what? Your descendants are going to say the same thing to my descendants, to my people, to the next generation. But it wasn't our fault. That was our grandparents. That was our great-grandparents. But at the same time, you'll turn around and say, oh, those people are the atrocities that are being done to those people. We have to save them. Let's bring them to America. Let's give them food and shelter. Why? Why are you going out of your way to help people in another country that are suffering Why are you going out of your way to help people in another country, men, women, especially women and children that are suffering, but you won't help the people that are suffering in America? You won't help the black people and the black children and women in America? You'll help whole families overseas, including the men. But when it comes to the black community, to the Negroes, you only want to help the women and children if the men aren't involved. And I can't help but notice that these people are the same skin tone as you. But then you'll have some ignorant black person saying, oh, there's no such thing as racism. What the hell you call it? You know, I'm going to take a break for right now because I'm getting heated. I'm getting heated. But comments, criticisms, anything you need clarified, if I can clarify for you, I will. This has been a very interesting episode, and there will be more. There will be more. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll talk to you later.